Welcome everybody to the 6 p.m. Redevelopment Agency meeting of October 11th, 2022. Let the roll call reflect that board members Blair, Heyer, Ritchie, and Nadolski are present. We are joined by board member White, who's here electronically. Marcia, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Awesome timing. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, and board members Jaburka and Lopez have asked to be excused, at least for now. They're both hoping to join us shortly or later on in the agenda. Okay, I'll ask past Chair Blair if you'll lead us in the pledge.
Sure. Yep. Please rise if you're able and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bart. Okay, please consider joining us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Do any board members have any special acknowledgements at this time tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda.
Chair, I would like to make a motion that we reorganize our agenda to put item 4, which is public hearing, fiscal year 2023 budget amendment, ahead of item 3, which is the reports from the administration, just to keep things in a proper order. I know our norms put it this way, but it seems to fit better the other way.
Second.
We have a motion by board member Heyer, second by board member Blair, to reorganize the agenda so that we hear the public hearing for the Union Stock Exchange building first, which is related to the budget opening. Then to hear from reports from administration so that we get public feedback before taking action on all 3 items related to that topic. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we'll move to item previously 4, now 3, public hearing, fiscal year 2023 budget amendment, Union Stock Exchange building. Lisa.
Thank you, board members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. The budget opening for the redevelopment agency is tied in pretty close to the budget opening that you will hear later in the city council meeting. So real quickly, the source of the funding for the transfer from the city to the RDA is coming from a CIP that was appropriated in fiscal year 22 in the amount of $845. That's the only reason I have this information up there. The RDA is not taking action on the city budget opening. It was just for information.
And that's $845,000.
Correct.
Right.
The action before you tonight for the redevelopment agency is to recognize that transfer from the city in the amount of $845,000 to be appropriated in the track line area. This is to facilitate a development agreement that CED will be addressing you on the development agreement later. They will provide you with a lot more information than I have in the budget opening, but the budget opening itself will consist of $200,000 for the purchase of the exchange building. There's a picture of the exchange building up there. $40,000 for site cleanup. That would include reboarding all the windows, putting a nice fence around the property and some site cleanup. And then $800,000 would go to the development agreement. In addition to the transfer from the city of $845,000, the development agreement includes the sale of this property to the developer for the amount the city is purchasing it, $195,000, making the total budget appropriation in the redevelopment agency $1,040,000.
Thanks, Lisa. Questions for Lisa? Okay, so no questions for Lisa. We'll take public comment. This is your opportunity to address the board on the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment for the Union Stock Exchange building.
Chair, did you want to also accept public input for those items that we will hear later also? Since they're mildly related.
They're not required of public input as reports from administration. So we'll do public hearing on the budget item.
Just the one. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Anybody in the room first? Okay. We'll go online. Oh, we got one. Angel. You know the routine?
Good evening. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I do not have a problem with the project. I understand why we're doing the project. I do have a problem with the process and the fact that this project was brought to the city without a full released RFQ. Again, I don't have a problem with the project. I have a problem with the process. And I'm asking that y'all consider when you're spending an extraordinary amount of money, generally speaking in the private sector, if you're going to be doing something like this, you're going to have a market feasibility study that's done that shows you not just that you're bringing in X number of jobs, but it's actual verifiable data that says, these are the incomes, this is where they're going to go. The county usually requires this whenever they do these types of projects. So I'm asking that in the future, because I find it hard to believe you're going to say no to this at this particular point, that you consider making sure that you're asking for real verified data of market studies showing that these jobs are going to exist and that there is a process brought forward for what are we missing. I thoroughly understand that developers come forth and go, hey, I've got this great idea, and that's lovely, but you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing. You don't know whether or not there is a nonprofit that could partner with a private entity to bring something of real value to the community. And I point to Youth Impact. Provides an amazing service to our community. Services, there's a waiting list. They're maxed out at 127 kids, I believe, the last time I looked. And the only reason Youth Impact exists is because that land was given to them. And the RDA generally has the ability to give property away, which we do frequently. But let's make sure that there is a process that involves a 30-day input of what could possibly be better than what was submitted. So that another organization like Youth Impact, for example, could do something like that. I know for a fact the Boys and Girls Club is dying for space. So I just ask that we have a more transparent process moving forward. I ask that there are actual viable studies so that when you're making a decision, it's based on data. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carlos Ariana. I live on 40th Street. I'm not exactly sure how this functions, but I'll try to convey my thoughts on this. So where I live by 40th, there's a park called Grandview. There's a Ogden School District property that is up for grabs, from what I understand. And apparently other land as well with like Lynn Elementary and North Jackson. I'm not sure if this is that same thing. But if there is an ability for us to provide these spaces for people so that they can increase their physical activity, increase their social connectedness to their community, I would say if we could please kind of like edge in that direction. I know that there's a limit to how much park space there is in the city of Ogden, and
So I think what you're looking for is a general comment from the public.
okay. So wait a little bit.
We'll have two opportunities. You can choose one.
Okay.
We'll have public comment after we finish
Okay.
the reports from administration. And then, or you can do it in the special city council meeting as well. We'll have the same.
Okay.
It's always at the end though.
Got it.
Cool?
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. This one is just for the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment. Yeah. Okay. We'll go online to Heath Sato. I'll let Brandon, I think you know the routine. Brandon, you good?
Hi there.
Hey, Heath.
Heath Sato. Hey. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. Regarding this project, again, I mentioned last week that I do like the design of this project. But last week I brought up that the last property you gave that you bought with taxpayer dollars and then gave to a developer for free with huge perks was the Wall Avenue project. I still actually haven't seen the revised document after we were told there were errors in who was listed on that contract. But I brought up that you guys had been presented that the developer for that project on Wall would be the developer of Industry and Post Projects in Salt Lake. Now they were listed under a different name, but that's Q Factor. And I asked, what's going on with the same developer being given multiple properties and huge benefits without any public process. And nobody responded at all. The administration, of course, did not respond, but none of you responded. So I assumed nobody knew. And I would hope that somebody has asked that question of the administration or of their development director, what's going on with the same developer under different business names, hidden under layers. What's up with that? Is it the same developer? Did your development director make a mistake saying it was the developer that did the Industry and Post projects, or are we just giving project after project to the same developer just under different names to hide who's getting all the projects? I don't know, and I would love to get any kind of response on that might help clear that up. Thanks.
Thanks, Heath. Anybody else care to address the board? Is Brandon behind the post over there? Okay.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
I have a motion by board member Heyer, second by board member Blair to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Husker? Marcia?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. Public hearing is closed. Brandon, can you help us with the what's up with that? I think is what the question was.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Q Factor is a development company that is doing a project called Industry in Salt Lake. That is indeed true. The gentlemen that comprise Highline Partners, which is the entity for the Wall Avenue project that was approved some weeks ago, are comprise the investment group that's part of Q Factor doing Industry. So they are all the same individuals working on the same project. Q Factor is doing the Exchange building, but the individuals that make up Highline that invested in Industry are not investing in Q Factor. I know all 6 of them very well. I've toured all their projects. We've had vast conversations. This is typical.
Did this project come unsolicited?
Yes.
This proposal? Okay.
I think both projects were unsolicited.
Yes, both of them did.
Okay. Any other questions for Brandon while we have him?
I guess what would the process be if we received an unsolicited request for a development and then we turned around and opened that up for an RF or a request for proposal or whatever?
It would be very unconventional when folks come to the city in the form of an unsolicited proposal. They've done some level of due diligence that has led them here and to a certain project. In the case of Q Factor for the Exchange Building, this is something that they had done preliminary analysis on for feasibility prior to coming to us. And so it's difficult to entertain someone's idea and say, thank you for having that idea. I'm going to go out and ask the community for a better idea. So the unsolicited proposals do pose a challenge in that manner. And so we tend to respect the incumbent when it comes to that point until we go through the full analysis to determine if what they're proposing is feasible. An exclusive negotiation agreement is the document that would typically govern that relationship, and that's something that we have employed administratively for some time now. And I think our most recent policy changes would allow us to bring that document to you when we sign it and give you some information about that unsolicited proposal at the time that we enter into that agreement.
Anybody else? I've got a question, maybe a couple. I'm going to get in Rich's, he calls it the Wayback Machine. It wasn't that far back, but when we first created the Business Exchange Zone, at that time, the finances were set for how much tax increment we would have and room to incentivize development and so on. But part of the agreement at that time was that the developer would take on the cost of restoring this building. Correct?
That's correct.
Then sometime later, we had to adjust all the terms because it was facing cost overruns. Costs weren't what we projected, et cetera. Soils contaminated, whatever it was. And so we had to extend the duration of the tax increment, if I remember. I'm totally going off memory.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Whatever happened to the developer paying for the restoration of the historic building?
So the performance of the developer in that respect of the master land and transfer development agreement, they did not perform. And so that's why we had the trapdoor provision that required us to buy the building back. So that we could then make sure that we controlled the destiny of it. We didn't want it to linger. We worked with the developer as long as we could in terms of getting them to perform under those terms. But when it was clear that they couldn't or wouldn't, then we triggered that trapdoor, and that's the mechanism that we're working through now with the budget transfer to get that money into the RDA to close where it should be. And then the coincidental effect of all this is that Q Factor then took an interest into the building. So those two things are totally separate, but luckily we have the opportunity now to work with someone who's willing to expend the money.
Sure. But this proposal requires that we sell the property to them for what we paid for it? Right?
No, I wanted to make sure that we at least were covering that expense because that was something that was set in the MLTDA as a requirement. So the purchase price was set to at least cover that. It does act as a subsidy because it's less than the market value of the building. And so it does act as a subsidy. But with the subsidy associated with the land and the $800,000, it's still less than what is the true gap for the project. But it is something that through negotiations, the developer is willing to accept.
But the private entity would own the building in the end?
Yes.
So we would no longer control the destiny of the structure.
That's right. So we have now a development agreement that is based on performance. So there's reversionary or there's post-closing penalties, both in the form of the LTDA and the participation agreement. So if work isn't done, then the participation agreement incentive does not happen, and there's a penalty, financial penalty for the LTDA. So yes, in this case, that does transfer and it does get conveyed away.
Okay. So I'm not trying to lawyer you or anything on this. I genuinely need to be refreshed on the third category. There's the unsolicited. There's the city. What do you call it?
There's unsolicited proposals, direct negotiation, and direct solicitation or public solicitation.
Public solicitation. Okay. One of the lessons I'm learning when I'm on this project, especially with the historic structure in the works of this whole thing, is we probably, to address some of the public comment we got, we probably ought to identify the projects that we definitely want to have a heavy hand in the future of and make those a city negotiated, go out for RFP type of a thing. I think in retrospect, this probably would have fit that bill better. And we could have maybe seen some other things, but experience is always experience, right? Lessons are always learned. So that's just something that I've thought about as I've heard the comment. We've had that discussion about direct solicitation and stuff for kind of ad nauseum.
Right.
And we're in a position where we're getting a lot of it, and that's good because it means we're going somewhere in the city. It does seem like we probably need to get somewhere where we identify those particular projects where we have a really strategic interest like this one and maybe get more proactive so that we can have options. Just something to think about. So anything else? Thanks for answering my questions.
Okay.
That's been ruminated in my mind as we've led up to it. So, and sorry I wasn't here last week to ask. Okay. Anything else, anybody?
I would probably make a comment or two before we have a motion and a vote. We've had this in a work session a couple of times, and I have made no secret that I have some concerns with the proposal, the building proposal. And there are a few reasons for that. One is when we established the BEH zone, there were some good standards put into place by mindful people that didn't have any pressure to do anything different. It was just good sound principles that we put into place to protect the structure and the building and make it look in context with its surroundings. We've changed those standards already once, and we're going to be asked again to do it again, and to build this structure that completely overshadows the Exchange building, and does something that we turned down just a few years ago on 25th Street, raising the height of a building, putting a glass-ish structure on top, which this is that on steroids, and I just can't see that it's complementary to the Exchange building. And while I really would like to see the Exchange building be rehabilitated and saved and repurposed, and this seems like it just does not seem to work for me. And I wish we could get another developer that could come and meet the standard that is already in place and do something that would enhance the structure and not overshadow it. So that's where I'm going to be with this item. I've not been able to get off of that point. So.
You're welcome to make a motion, or unless there's other discussion. Marcia, are you able to follow along in the discussion?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, we'll entertain action on the item.
So, Chair, I'd make a motion to adopt proposed resolution 2022-9.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Ritchie, second by Board Member Blair to adopt proposed resolution 2022-9. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Heyer.
No.
Board Member Ritchie.
Aye.
Board Member White.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
No. That motion passes. I think
It doesn't.
It does not pass.
Oh, because you're right. It's not a majority because we're short members. That motion does not pass. So we are either going to reconsider it or not in the future, right? But I guess procedurally it did not pass. Okay. I think you've explained your rationale behind your vote pretty well.
Yeah, I just can't get to that point where we want to contribute this much money to do something that I think actually does harm the overall appearance of the building.
We're short a couple board members, so I don't know how this would go if they were here. But for me, I appreciate your feedback on it too. That's not where my opposition comes from. I guess it's kind of based on the questions I was asking Brandon. I wanted to make sure I was accurate in my recollection because it does seem like we set a budget and then we change the budget because we're not going to meet it. And then we set a standard and then we change the standard because we're not meeting it. But then someone opportunistic comes and we change the standard. So it kind of feels like we're taking what we can get. And I'm really nervous about the stock exchange building not getting restored as a result of tonight's decision or any decisions we take in the future if we reconsider it with other council members, because there's a real risk that asset could sit completely unrestored. So that makes me really nervous. So I didn't come by my no vote lightly. But I'm also growing. I'm just having a lot of fatigue of having to change standards and change budget to meet whatever opportunities coming our way. And so that's where I'm coming from. Okay. Do we need to consider the reports from administration on the proposed land transfer and development agreement, considering we didn't adopt a budget for it?
I mean, it's up to you. Obviously, the decision is, we know how it's going to go, so.
Okay. Should we maybe take a motion to remove those items from the consideration tonight?
Chair, I really didn't think I was going to get anybody else voting with me. And it doesn't change my vote that happened, but I do think that there are other board members that need an opportunity to vote. And so I think I would make a motion that this be tabled to whatever date Janine says.
Can I just ask, by tabling these two items, does that include allowing the other to revote?
We tabled this public hearing.
Okay.
So.
Well, we already took action on the public hearing.
Yeah.
So we would have
the motion that was taken had failed. We can take another motion.
Correct.
That's what I'm proposing.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, you're right.
So, I'm sorry. You want to table the land transfer and development agreement and reconsider the budget amendment at a different date?
I want, nothing is, my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, is that this item 4, the public hearing, the budget amendment, the motion didn't pass.
Right. So your option is to reconsider, and that means either you or Ben has to make the motion to reconsider. Because it has to be by a person that voted.
Correct.
In the negative.
Sorry, folks. Stick with us for some procedural rigmarole.
I thought something had to actually pass in order to have to be reconsidered.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think Janine's right. We've run into this one other time. I can't remember what the issue was, but
I think we changed it so that it doesn't have to pass it. Anybody can, if it fails, then whoever voted, one of the members that voted against it, that caused it to fail. I'll have to double check. Anyway, we can go, it has to be the next two meetings, so I think maybe we should go to the November 1st.
Okay.
So
we'll need a motion to table and a motion to reconsider. So let's do a motion to reconsider on fiscal year FY23 budget amendment.
Okay, I'll make a motion to reconsider that vote. Anybody can second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Ritchie to reconsider fiscal year 2023 budget amendment regarding the Union Stock Exchange building on November 1st. This is a voice vote, or a voice vote? Okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Right.
Okay.
These other two items, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
We've got smart
Educate
people.
us.
We've had smarter people working on it over here. Did we?
So, well, vote to reconsider, I think.
The vote
Now
to
we'll-
reconsider just makes it live again. So now, if you want to table that also, you need to make a
table
motion
all
to
three of
table
them
that.
to the 11th.
Okay,
To the
so
Chair. Okay.
I would make a motion then that we table item 4A, 3A, 1 and 2
Second.
to November 1st.
Okay. Now we have a motion by board member Heyer, second by board member Ritchie to table
Yes.
items related to the Union Stock Exchange building to November 1st. This is a voice vote or voice vote still? This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those items are tabled till November 1st. Thanks, you guys. Sorry for the rigmarole. It's got to be done. Okay. Public comment. Yep. This is your opportunity to address the council on any item. Please look.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlos Serrana, and as I was saying earlier, the things that I was thinking about were the 3 properties from the school district that were perhaps going to be either up for grabs from the city. I would want to rethink my process now watching what just occurred. What I would want you guys to understand, though, is that I think that it is important that, some of us that live around these neighborhoods, around these buildings, around these parks, if we could expand them, if we could do anything that helps us convert something to a public good where people can exercise, can socialize, can have events. At the Grandview Park, we have sports. We have events that I have been invited to that made me feel connected to the community, which I wouldn't have had the opportunity if that park did not exist. So I was going to throw a lot of science at you guys, but I'm thinking that just want you guys to understand that my feeling as somebody who lives on 40th near Grandview and some of these other parks that I use on a daily basis, it would be really important for you guys to consider, some of our young people, some of our different cultural backgrounds, people who are doing different types of activities at these areas, and serving them would be really, really important so that, they could avoid health issues in the future or just feeling disconnected. Having Grandview expanded a little bit more so that we have trails for some of our elderly to walk. There's people who walk dogs there. There are kids that, play sports, like I said. There's people who go sledding in the winter. There's a lot of activities happening at that park. And I feel like as the community grows, which I am part of the, I did come here from another state in 2019, so I am part of the reason of the growth. But to see all these people, not have as much access, I'm a little bit afraid of property that is not a public good that gets converted to a larger apartment complex or just a place where you can't simply exist. And what's really cool about Ogden, and at least for me, from an outsider coming to Ogden, is all of the spaces that you can just simply exist. Just a park where you can exist. You don't have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get into a place, so you can just relax. So if you guys could prioritize that while you guys are considering those buildings or these properties, that would be awesome for us as a community. Think, the next generation, the generation after that, are they going to have access to a place to play, to a place to fly a kite, or a place to just have like a picnic? Those are things that are important, and I think that should be all for me. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Carlos. Where'd you move here from, Carlos?
Orlando, Florida.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Thanks for your patience, too. Okay, anybody else in the chambers?
Michelle Miller. I'm a resident of Ogden, and I have ties to the Exchange building. My grandfather used to run cattle through there. So where would I go about finding out what these plans are for that area down there and that development? Because listening to this conversation, I'm concerned also that there will be development and then the Exchange building will continue to sit in the condition that it's in. And I think if you walk down 25th Street, you can see where some of those old covenants were made, that if the bottom of the buildings were converted into businesses that were used, but they didn't have to finish the top, that you do have some of the buildings down there that do need the tops restored that haven't been done yet because it wasn't written into the contracts or the covenants when they did that. So where would I go about finding out about this?
Thanks, Michelle. So you're in the right place. In the packet, if you go online and just click on the link to that agenda item, it'll bring up all of the public packets. I think this is one that's been in the paper. There's a lot of daylight on it. So we'll let you get caught up. Sounds like we'll be talking again on November 1st, so you'll have your chance. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, anyone else?
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. Wow, that was quite the surprise. Which brings us to an amazing opportunity. I too agree with Board Member Heyer in the aspect that our historic buildings and our historic character are extremely important. I live in an almost 100-year-old house that has its own quirks, but it's part of our history. And 25th Street has its history. And I'm sure you've all been getting feedback. There are a lot of people that aren't very happy with the massing of the new development on 25th Street. And that's another thing, but people love our historicness. It makes us special. And Mr. Cooper's explanation of if someone spends all sorts of money doing research, that we feel obligated to accept that and not open it up, feels to me like if I decided I was going to give you an unsolicited proposal and I spent $30,000, $40,000 in doing some research and figuring things out, and I brought it to you and you decided that, well, you spent all this money, so therefore we're going to take this. That feels really socialist to me. And I just didn't think that a city would be like, well, first person in the door who spends some money on this, we're going to go. And I too echo your concerns. That building does need to be protected. And this is an opportunity to open it up for 30 days and see who comes in. And competition is good. It forces developers to bring their A game. There are many cities across the entire United States that if you bring a proposal, they have a trigger that says it's going to be thrown out to see what else is there for 30 days, which forces a developer that they're going to bring you their, like if you're buying a house, your best and highest offer, the best thing that you could possibly bring to it. Competition is good. It's how capitalist societies work. And we owe it to our citizens to make sure we have gotten the best and highest use of this land. And this particular project very may well be it. But I echo Board Member Heyer's concerns about the historicness of where we are in retaining our character. So I encourage you to throw this open for 30 days and see what comes in, because there's a whole lot of people who are willing to spend money when you're giving them property and tax credits. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the chambers before we go online? Hello.
Hi, my name's Teresa Bramwell. I own a property at 25th and Monroe. This is the police report from my property for the last 6 years. It's 4 pages long, single-spaced. I have been absolutely inundated with crime, homeless people, drug dealers, drug addicts, prostitutes, just vagrants, graffiti. Every form of crime imaginable has been committed upon me. My house was burned down twice. Burned by homeless people. And then the property next door, Topper Bakery, was burned 3 months later. When Topper Bakery burned, the fire department destroyed the rear of my building after my house next door had already been burned twice. I was never contacted by the fire department or anybody that they had destroyed my building. as part of Topper Bakery's fire. I saw it on the news, and I came there and found that my building the doors had been busted down, all the security bars had been ripped off the back of the building. It had been totally exposed, so any homeless person could come in and do anything they want. Now, after I've been a victim of all this crime, this massive, absolutely massive amount of crime by homeless people, now code enforcement is harassing me almost on a daily basis about my house that has been burned by homeless people. So now not only have I been a victim of criminals and homeless people and drug addicts and prostitutes and vagrants and graffiti artists and every other form of criminal, now I'm a victim of Ogden City and their code enforcement officers harassing me, fining me, telling me I need to come into compliance within so many days or sell my property. I've been forced to sell my property by Ogden City's Code Enforcement Department. I'm tired of being a victim. I'm tired of being a victim of this city because the crime will never be stopped. Nobody will put the criminals in prison. The police never will take them to prison. The jail won't accept them. They just continually are at my property. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being a victim of crime. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Heath Sato online.
Thanks, Chair Nadolski. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I just wanted to kind of review what we saw tonight with this development deal. So the answer was yes, it's the same developer on both projects. And your development director, I'm trying not to make this about a person, but it keeps coming back to one person. Your development director knew the developer was Q Factor for the wall project, and he knew that this one was coming up and it'd be Q Factor again. And it looked kind of sketchy that, same developer's getting like $3.5 million in benefits from the city right in a row. And they use the High Line, they use the financial company that basically loaning the money, the investors, as the developer, so you wouldn't see Q Factor as the actual developer. Developers get their money from different places, but the developer is the developer. It's the same developer on both projects, and that was hidden from you for some reason. I think we know the reason. And I don't know why the RDA should tolerate this over and over again. You're giving huge benefits without any open process. It's all given to people in the background. People, they know. It's frustrating. I'm trying to be calm about this, but I mean, this is the same thing I was complaining about the brown ice cream building with, you guys accepted a low value for the building from a business partner of that developer, presented as someone working for the city to create a value for that building. It's absurd. And I feel like they probably think like they're doing the right thing. They're getting good development in here, but I do not like the way it's being done at all. I think it's shady. I don't think it's above board. There's no transparency. And I wish the RDA would stand up to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Heath. Anyone else in the room or online care to address the board? Yeah, go ahead.
So hi, I'm Leishka Moreto, and I also live here in Ogden. And I wanted to talk about that building that we're considering giving to the developer. as far as I understand, it's $1 million that we're putting in order for them to purchase it from us. Is that correct? $1 million-something that we're putting in there? How does it work?
It's a little more complicated than that. But
Okay. So because in my head, right, like to me, it's a little bit concerning that somebody that works for the city is, feels okay to just give up a property with such historical value so easily. And the fact that we are giving some money into that project, I think that it could go, I don't know how it works, but isn't there a way that the city could use that money into restoring its own historical properties? And maybe you give some use to those historical properties to the use of the public, and maybe if it makes some profit, use it back to restore other historical properties, because it seems that we're not considering our own history here in the city. It's just a little bit concerning that way. And so, there's so many things that can be done instead of giving that building towards a developer that who knows what they're going to do with that. They might build new apartments and rent them to other people and continue to make profit out of a place that was historically important to Ogden at some point, and not profit today, but profit for whoever knows how long. And then, the city lost a big asset, that way. So it's just the whole transaction just doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like it fits. It just seems like they're taking away, public treasure in a way. And I feel like the city can do more than just give it away and use the resources it has into just implementing and reinforcing some kind of restoration in it. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Seeing no more movement, I'll ask for comments from the executive director.
Sure. A couple quick things. Ma'am, you've got the right person in the room to listen to what happened. Our police chief is right over here, and he's certainly listened to that, and we've talked about it, and we'll look into that. So I appreciate those comments and certainly respect the frustrations there. I also like to say I look forward to the conversation on November 1st. To give some context on the Exchange building, to say that we're just going to the first person in the door is not accurate at all. We've been trying to get somebody to come and invest in that building for decades, literally decades. It hasn't been occupied since the early 80s. That means it's 40 plus years old. To renovate historic buildings like that is not something the city can do on its time. We absolutely do not have the money and ability to do that. So part of the choice is, do we tear down some of those historical buildings, or do we find other types of uses for them? And that's something I'd like everybody to know, is that's kind of what we're facing right now. We have shopped it. We've shopped it a lot. It is really expensive because it's so old. It takes a lot of seismic upgrades. It takes a lot of other types of investment for that. So the way we've looked at this in the last little while is that nobody's stepped up and been willing to invest that kind of money and energy to restore that historic building, but it's becoming a nuisance down there for sure. And I'm looking at this either gets renovated by somebody that can come in and do it and has the experience, or it's going to be a nuisance down there, and the other choice is that it just gets torn down. And so that's the dynamic that we're working with in our economic development department, and something you all have to consider, because if it goes too long, it's not restorable. And that's something I think we need to have some more conversations about. So I'll look forward to the conversation on November 1st. But other than that, I appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director. Comments from board members.
Chair, I want to respond a little bit to the mayor about that. I don't differ from your opinion on it very much. As I said in our work session last week, that my vote could be changed by just changing the height of that addition. If that costs us more money, I'm okay with that. But I think we need to protect the visual beauty, the historic beauty of that building, and what they've proposed does not do that in my mind. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more money so that it does pencil for a developer to get it done. But and that's entirely where I'm at. So If we can come somewhere along those kind of lines, and I hope that Brandon in his conversations with them between now and the 1st, maybe they can come up with some kind of way to do that. Because I think we have already set a precedent on 25th Street, and we shouldn't be breaking it just because. But I do treasure the building, and I think we ought to do what we can to save it. But let's not turn it into an abortion while we're doing it.
That's fair. Give us 2 weeks to work on it.
Okay.
Anyone else? No. I'll just say that I don't come at it from the historic side, I guess. I certainly value the structure, the history. I mean, it really is the heart of that whole development. It's intended to be anyway. When I saw the proposal, I actually really liked it. So I don't find it distasteful or anything. It doesn't it doesn't turn me off in that way. I'm just growing really tired of changing the budget and changing standards to fit what comes. That's where I'm coming from. I could be persuaded to reconsider. I don't think we're in a position, nor would it be appropriate at this point in time to put it out to an RFP. I think that would be hugely inappropriate and would cross way too many lines. I think that if we were going to do it, that was our miss, and that's something we should have done, and we should consider doing in the future on targeted projects. I don't think we have enough bandwidth and enough staff to do that approach on every project. We just flat don't. And if there's private developers out there that are looking at our properties and want to invest, we should be able to entertain that. So I'm not against the unsolicited thing either. But I'm really tired of having the same discussion about it. Every single time we want to do anything in the city, we've got to have the same discussion, and that's getting old too. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I guess it's a little bit more of a principled stance, not so much on the details of the historical piece. So, okay. If there's no more comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by board member Ritchie, second by board member Heyer to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Marcia, you still with us? No? Oh, we lost Marcia. Okay. Any opposed? Okay. That meeting is adjourned. Give the recorders just one moment to reset.
This is 2. 6 and 7. Oh, yeah. Got it. Let's just do them as they come.
Not quite. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back everybody to the special city council meeting of October 11th, 2022. Let the roll call reflect that council members Blair, Heyer, Ritchie, and Nadolski are present, and council members White, Lopez, and Chaburka have asked to be excused. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes. Thankfully, both of them are here. Work session of April 5th, 2022. Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have reviewed those minutes and found them to be correct.
Thanks, Bart. Appreciate that. Joint work session of April 12th, 2022. Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes, I've reviewed those minutes, and I make a motion that we adopt or accept the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Next item is common consent. Joint resolution supporting Utah's bid to host the Winter Olympics.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt the common consent agenda by giving support to that joint resolution.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to adopt the item of common consent. This is a roll call vote. It's usually a voice vote, isn't it?
It's a resolution,
Because
that's
it's a
why
resolution.
it's a,
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Ritchie,
Aye.
Councilmember White.
It's no longer with us.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
aye, that passes. And I'll clarify, Councilmember White is still with us. She's still alive, just not in the meeting. Sorry.
Never.
I saw Band-Aid Brandon like freak out when I said that. Okay. Next item is reports from Planning Commission.
Chair, in as much as the item in the previous meeting was tabled, and this is related, I would make a motion that we table item 4 and item 6 on the agenda, which is also related, to November 1st.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to table items 4 and 6 as listed on the agenda to November 1st. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We look forward to that discussion too. Thanks, Mayor. Brings us to Chief Young for reports from administration, use of custodial property, firearms. And then we're going to get to some unfinished business and we're going to let you off the hook, I think. Of course, you're last on it. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Chief, go ahead.
Should be pretty quick. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate those of you who heard me out and had all the questions last week. Just as a quick refresher is what we discussed. Under Utah Code 24.3.103.5, we're required as a police department to come before our legislative body and ask for permission to dispose of unclaimed and no longer relevant property we have in our evidence. There's specific requirements for firearms, and this transmittal, this proposal we submitted is in compliance with that code. It will allow us to actually engage with a federal firearms dealer that was selected through RFP here in Ogden to dispose of firearms that were required by this legislation to sell. Other firearms that we're allowed to dispose of, we'll be disposing of through an MOU through Bloom's Recycling, which they will just crush and make those firearms unusable. It'll just be a mutual agreement with no financial compensation on either side for the disposal of those firearms. But it's only firearms that meet the code to be able to be destroyed. Other firearms and firearms of value will be sold through High and Mike's Pawn Shops who win that RFP with Weaver Morgan Strike Force to enter into that. So that's the brief summary. Any other
questions for
further
Chief?
questions from last week?
I wasn't here last week, and maybe it's in the
That's why I was trying to give you the down and dirty. Sorry.
You did a good job. I've been spending a lot of time getting caught up since I got back into cell coverage. I was out of touch for like almost 10 days. It was awesome.
Yeah, until you get back, right?
Came back to some stuff. Yeah. How many are we talking that are destroyed versus sold?
It's going to be interesting to see with this under this. There'll probably be more that'll be sold than will be destroyed. So they have to be involved in a notorious type of crime or unfit for resale. We do get, as I mentioned last week when you weren't here, a lot of guns that are really unfit for resale, that are just not functionally safe. They have serial numbers destroyed, so they can't be legally possessed. Those type of guns will be the ones that will be getting destroyed. The guns that have value that don't fit that description will be going to get sold. I'd be happy to come back though in a year and give you a report on that. We do have an abundance of firearms in our evidence right now that we do need to dispose of. There's been some back and forth with the state on whether they'd be willing to accept all those firearms down at the crime lab to test them. So that was the direction for a while. Then they decided, guess what? We can't take that many firearms. So we still do an IBANS testing on all of our firearms, which is, like I mentioned last week in work sessions, like a digital fingerprint for the markings on the shell casings. But the state crime lab can't take all these guns to dispose for us. That's why we need to enter into this MOU with Bloom's and with High and Mike's with the RFP to sell them. And this is really just to be in compliance with the code.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief? Just a comment. If you've ever fired a high point, I think that's dysfunctional. Brand new.
We get a lot of them.
Throw those away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and I mentioned last week, it's my preference to destroy many of those that are unfit, unfunctional, but there are going to be guns that will be sold, and the money will come back to the Weaver Morgan Strike Force to support the operations out there.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for the.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. This is not a public hearing, so If there's no more comments or questions, we can entertain action.
I would make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2022-20.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ritchie, second by Councilmember Heyer, to adopt proposed resolution 2022-20. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Thanks, Chief. On to unfinished business. We I think it's Barton, you're going to come talk to us about proposed zone text amendments to the regulations for metal accessory buildings. We talked about this on September 20th.
Yes.
So here we are again.
Okay, so this is a continuation of the discussion we had on September 20th. The request is to amend the zoning ordinance to allow metal-sided buildings on over 400 square feet to allow replacement of a garage. And the Planning Commission had considered this, and they'd made a recommendation to you to amend the zoning code to allow metal-sided accessory buildings on lots less than a half acre. Currently, they're allowed on lots over a half acre. The recommendation comes with specific standards that address the metal coating that needs to be done on the building, the pitch of the roof, the eaves, that there needs to be certain relief features such as an awning, dormer, porch on it. There are requirements for windows. And the Planning Commission recommended that the Planning Commission review each one for compatibility. When the council considered this, you looked at those standards and had recommended that we come back with something that would eliminate that last part, that the Planning Commission review for compatibility, but that we propose specific standards for compatibility. So just if the Planning Commission were to review it, what sort of things would they be looking for, and can we just quantify those? And if those standards are met, then it would be approved at staff level instead of going to the Planning Commission. So in doing that, we looked at really two things that would make something compatible. One is simply the color. And so we're proposing a standard that the primary color of the building match the primary color of the single-family dwelling, or be a neutral gray, tan, or brown. So more blend in the background.
Martin, could I ask a question there?
Yes.
So when you say matched, does that mean complementary? I mean, so if the home has, trim colors, could those trim colors be the color of the building? Or
as drafted, it says the primary color matches the primary color of the dwelling. So that didn't include the trim. You could amend that to include the trim color if you chose, but
okay. All right, thank you.
And the second thing we thought that the Planning Commission, if they reviewed this, would look at is just the pattern of the metal siding. So they come in both basically horizontal and vertical, and vertical is more popular, but they do come in both. And just looking at what the Planning Commission might be looking at if they were to review it, that's something that they would look at. And you see the top example, you've got a house that has horizontal siding and a garage that has the vertical siding. And there's, you might look at that as clashing. And the bottom example has horizontal siding on the house and horizontal siding matching on the garage. So we were proposing that would be an objective standard that we could look at and say, okay, if it's matches the color, matches the pattern, then it would be compatible. So that comes up to you to make a motion whether or not to adopt the ordinance.
Thank you, Barton. Okay, we had a petitioner on this item, Mike Miller. Do you have anything else to add from what you had last time? Yeah, come on up. We'll give you a minute or two since you've taken a year or two out of your life for this.
If we could go back to that picture that he had, the white and the white.
There you go.
You look at that garage in that house, that looks nothing alike. And that's the way it's going to be with most of your houses in Ogden City, because the aluminum anymore is bigger than the aluminum they had in the back in the day. So it's no different. If in my opinion, the gray house with the gray in the back, that's a much more aesthetic look than the two on the lower, the two white ones, because you look at the size of the siding on the house, which is 2 inches, and the side of the siding that on the garage, which is 4 inches, which looks more, not quite as matching as the gray, and it's in the backyard. You're really not going to notice. I could see if it's sitting on the side of your house that you really need to be that dead on with the siding you're putting on a garage that's mounted to the side of your house like that. But if it's in the backyard, the vinyl, the horizontal siding is a lot better siding than the aluminum siding, and it doesn't change the aesthetics between the residence and the outbuilding.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Is there any way we can do anything about how it's sitting like that?
So, Mike, you're referring to the orientation. So you're referring to the orientation of the siding, not the actual material itself. So
not the actual material itself, but if you're going to use a baked enamel siding, the baked enamel siding can only be put up and down. If you put it horizontal, if you put it vertical, it's the way it's supposed to be built. You put it horizontal, it leaks. You can't put the corners on it. It creates a lot of problems to try to turn that metal that's built a certain way to a different angle.
Okay.
And I've talked to my contractor about it, and he was like, I've done a couple of them like that, and it's the worst thing I ever done because all they do is leak. You can't put the trim on them because you got the bumps going sideways instead of up and down where they're supposed to fit over. You've got all of the ridges that are supposed to be vertical.
Well, your contractor must be a good man. I've done way worse than that. So, yes, we have options. So, thanks for your input, Mike, and patience. Appreciate it. Okay, we do have public input on this item. So, if anybody from the public cares to address the council, state your name and limit your comments through it.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. I am thrilled that we are coming up with standards to make it easier for people to get through planning with just looking at what does it have, choose the material, choose the appropriate thing, move on. They go to the plan desk, it gets stamps, and it moved on. I would not shut up about that as a planning commissioner, so I'm really excited to see this movement. I also agree with the petitioner. This is an unintended consequence of someone making a decision not being involved, and nor could they understand all of the materials that are possible. So I ask that you add an exception on orientation with regards to specific materials that have to be installed at that orientation of vertical as opposed to horizontal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else care to address the council on this item related to metal siding? Brandon, is there anybody online? I can't see on this side. Looks like we got one hand raised. Really? Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Good, Brandon. Okay, go ahead, Heath.
Heath Soto, Ogden resident. Just quickly want to say I 100% agree with Mike on this as somebody that works with materials and knows materials and deals with weather and outdoor works. He's 100% right on this, and I hope we can change this accordingly. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Heath. Okay, it's not a public hearing, so we don't need to take that motion. Any comments or action from the council?
Chair, I would make a note that if this were not steel siding, we wouldn't, our ordinance does not care which orientation it has, and it seems like to be in harmony with the rest of our ordinances that it not matter here either. And it seems like it would also suit the petitioner as well. So I would move that we amend ordinance 2022-42 by striking the proposed language in section 15-13-33.c.1.d.3 specific to horizontal pattern siding and the example picture included. That's a motion.
Wait for a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair, that I'm not going to repeat. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes.
And Chair, I would make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-42 as amended.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Ritchie to adopt proposed ordinance 2022-42 as amended. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that also passes. Michael Miller, congratulations. I saw your shirt. You were, in fact, old enough to drive cool cars and to see this proposal through. So, congrats.
Hey, thanks for your patience.
Dude,
I appreciate every one of you people up there.
You're a rock star. Sorry it was so hard.
We saved you a couple of weeks too.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Okay. Moving on to public comments. This is your opportunity to address the council on any item. Please come to the mic if you care to address council. State your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. We have a lot of great things that are going on in Ogden. And speaking of historic and wonderful and beautiful Union Station, LUPEC is having the Hispanic Festival this weekend on Saturday. So I encourage everyone to come out and participate in the food and the dancing and the singing and all of the fun that's there. It was great last year and it's going to be even bigger this year. So I encourage you all to come. Thank you.
Thanks for the reminder. Anyone else? Okay. We'll go online to Heath Sato.
Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I also wanted to mention earlier that if I'm understanding this correctly, we purchased land from a developer or from a property broker, gave land to him across the street from there. And so that's awesome. And then the person that was given, the developer that was given this land didn't perform what they promised to do. So we have to purchase it again. It's taxpayer money buying a property twice that we gave away. And it's being given with all these benefits, $1 million of our money to a developer. That was the same developer on the previous project that you just gave away. An acre of land downtown, $2.5 million worth of free loans. The same developer, and your development director hid this fact from you. That is the same developer. They intentionally used the financial partners on that project to hide that fact. And I really hope behind the scenes you guys are asking some really tough questions, because we seemed a lot more concerned about hurting the feelings or hurting the bank accounts of these developers than we are about being responsible with taxpayer money. Few people behind closed doors should not be able to pick who gets all these huge benefits. I know I hear the mayor say that we have tried to have that land developed forever, but did we have it out there that we were going to give $1 million to anybody that worked on it and give it to them? Was that out there? Was that part of the deal the whole time? Or did, we just do that in the back room, say, hey, we like you guys. How does the system work? There's no transparency here. And I'm really, really uncomfortable with the same developer doing both projects in a row and having one of them hidden from you. You can't do your job if you don't know what you're looking at. You are not being trusted to do your job. It's unacceptable. Anyways, I do want to thank the police for doing a great job putting the stoplight at 26th and Harrison today. They were really awesome and moving traffic fast. So I'll end on a good note. Have a good night.
Thanks, Heath. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing no others. Comments from the mayor?
Nothing to add at this time, thanks.
Comments from the council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item 10.
Chair, I would make a motion that we adjourn into a closed session for one of the 7 items listed.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adjourn into a closed executive session for one of the items, one of the reasons listed on the agenda. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye, that passes. We'll adjourn into a closed executive session. We will adjourn from that session as well as from this meeting within that session. So this is the last you'll see of us tonight. Thank you very much.